Yeah. Hi, everybody. Dom Famularo here again for the Sabian Education Network. And this is a program that really allows us to connect drummers and drum educators worldwide, which is exciting, which is informative, and it really is a way of opening your mind to visiting many different educators around the world. I do this on Thursdays at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Joe Bergamini has a spot on Fridays at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But today I'm absolutely honored to have Rob Hirons here from Marseille, France, originally from England. Rob, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Also, it's 8 o'clock in the evening over here, so it's dark outside. It's been a very, very beautiful day. But first thing I want to say to you, Dom, and to Joe and to Sabian is that I'm very honored to be on the channel. So thank you very much for asking me and giving me this opportunity.
Well, you know, Rob, it's the pleasure is ours for sure, because what you're doing is you're maintaining this incredible enthusiasm with drumming in Marseille. Now, Marseille, France is the south of France. I've been there several times with you, Rob. I've been going there for the past 25 years, and it's an absolutely beautiful part of the world in where you live down there. It's just fantastic with the people, the weather, the food, and the red wine I happen to love down there, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I concur totally. You know, the funny thing is I find that when you live somewhere, it's very, very easy to forget how nice it is. Yeah. You know, when you live there every day, and you know, when I was living in England, it's the same thing. When I come over here to France, it's amazing that Marseille, when I visited Marseille many times, first of all, and it's like, wow. And then when you live there, you tend to you forget the nice things that are in front of your eyes all the time. You tend to, forget the hills and the mountains and the sun and the sea. And so what I try to do now is to remind myself, just by sitting down, looking out of the window and seeing the mountains and just overlooking the sea, what a fantastic place it actually is. And it's sunny most of the year, I can say that.
Yeah. And where you are, you're not that far from getting around to other areas that are down in the south there, which are also gorgeous. So it's a beautiful part of the world. But I got to ask you, when you were born in what part of England were you born in?
I was born in Harrogate, which is in Yorkshire. So I don't think I actually have that Yorkshire accent. I never had it. So it's in Harrogate, which is it's got Harrogate, Leeds, and York. And it's very green. It's a very beautiful place. And they kind of say, they compare it with France. If you say the south of England, you have the capital, London, and then the further you go up to the north, the more rural it gets. Well, in France, the north of France, you have Paris, which is the capital, and then the further you go down to Marseille, the more rural it gets. And I was up in rural Yorkshire, and it was a beautiful place, a fantastic place. And I've got loads of friends still there, and I try and visit it when I can.
Boy, it's kind of interesting. So you were in England, you were born in England, you're living there. About how early was it where drums and music entered your life?
Well, yes, that's a very good question. I always loved music, and I began by listening to Mike Oldfield. Strangely enough, I loved this enthusiastic kid, very young kid, and turning the volume up on the hi-fi, which I can't do anymore because the neighbours complain. And then very strangely enough. I also loved Jean-Michel Jarre. It was like a French keyboard player. Yeah, so I homed in towards these composers. Like one guy, I was fascinated by the idea of one person playing all sorts of instruments, and then Jean-Michel Jarre was playing loads of synthesizers and stuff like that. Just one guy composing all that music, and I really, really loved that. And then I discovered, while I was in high school, the drums. Nice. In actual fact, I started off, unbelievably, playing violin when I was very young. Okay. Yeah. I couldn't do it now. And then I got onto keyboards. My parents bought me this tiny little Casio keyboard like this. I really loved that. I really got into that sort of thing. And then I discovered the drums in high school. And the thing that fascinated me was the kind of naughtiness of it, and I'll explain what I mean, is that we had all these, in the music area in our school, we had all these practice rooms, and the drummers were the ones that just made a racket, and there was something very, we used to share the drum seat, used to go into the drum room at dinner time, And it's a small room, and there'd be about 6 of us, and we'd go around there, and I'd be fascinated by these guys that were like hitting really hard, and it's like, wow, there's something touched me in this room with these guys just wailing away. And it was like the old thing was, he's the best one in the school, and he's the second best, and so on and so on. And it was like a hierarchy thing. And but the thing that really made it kind of fun was that whole point of we used to disturb the flute lessons next door and the violin lessons and stuff like that. And if we were really lucky, we could actually bring teachers out of the staff room, which is quite a way away, and have them coming down to stop us, and then unfortunately locking the drum room. So that's what really did it for me. And then I signed up for drum lessons with a local teacher called Payne, who is a drum teacher percussionist in the north of England, Payne. And amazingly, a couple of years ago, I went back to Leeds Music Academy, and played a clinic there, and Ray came down, and that was amazing. That was such an honor to have my first drum teacher come down to a clinic that I did there.
How old is Ray now?
I couldn't say that. I don't even know, and I couldn't say it morally. I don't know, but he's still a great educator as far as I know in the area. But I don't have a lot of contact with him. I met him at that particular point. I was able to find him, and he came down, but we don't actually speak to each other a lot.
Mm-hmm. So you're taking lessons with him. So what did he kind of take you through? How old were you at the time when you started studying?
I was about 12 or 13, so second year class.
And what did you start working on at that time?
At that time, I was working on a book which I still have right over here, which I still use, called Practical Percussion. I don't remember the name of the author. Practical Percussion, and that was the book that really took me through. And there was a lot of stuff about reading just the snare drum. And, we started off by just reading snare drum, quarter notes, eighth notes. At that time, they were called like quavers and semi-quavers and stuff, of course. And crotchets, that was it. That was one, yeah. Something like that, yeah. And we were reading snare drum stuff, and I was fascinated with that. And it was like an honor to be able to get onto the kids' stuff. Like, after several months, I'm going to play the hi-hat and the toms and stuff like that. It's like, wow, So that was a real honor. And we were just working through this book, reading, basically. And what happened is the lessons were all afternoon. So the first few lessons, 20-minute slots, were in the dinner break. And then as they went on, they kind of dug into the actual afternoon's lessons. So what happened is, if your lesson was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you could actually get up in the class and say, I've got to go to my drum lesson, which was really great.
So was that the only book you were working on at that time? Were you working on any technique at all?
That was the only book that I can remember. We had a few sheets printed out. I've forgotten. It was a long time ago, but mainly that book with a few sheets that he actually wrote out himself. And there was some other snare drum work that I can't remember about, double strokes and things like that. But it was a long time ago. So it really was basically just that book. And then I played in the school orchestra, which was mostly snare drum stuff, some rock stuff, and I played in another school band on a Saturday morning. So it was really this kind of school band atmosphere, just a typical high school thing, drum lessons, and then you get put into the school band and so on, which is like an honor to play. And I was very, very proud of being able to play in those bands. It's a fantastic time.
So how influential and important were those high school bands?
Essential. Really essential to get up and play in front of people, even if it was just like the snare drum. I did a classical orchestra, and I was on timpani and stuff like that, which was great. A little bit of like marimba and things like that, which are a bit more tricky because they actually have it's out of my domain. And then some kids stuff as well, and that was really, really good. And it's great, when you're young like that to play in these groups, and then they have that day when the parents are going to come and see you. That's amazing, of course.
Yeah, that really is an inspiring, point of where now you're into the level of performing, and that's much different than just rehearsing in the process.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So you're doing this here. So you had mentioned Mike Oldfield. Now, Mike Oldfield, I know for many, many years, Simon Phillips played with him.
Totally, yeah. Mm.
So were you aware of what was happening with Simon, who was a phenomenal player himself and involved in all styles of music and a phenomenal producer himself too? What was it like? Were you being influenced by certain drummers at that time?
Yeah, totally. As I said, I was into Mike Oldfield, but that was before really the whole drum kit thing. That was like when I first started out in liking music and all this sort of thing. And then as it went along, my first influence was Neil Peart, and he has been ever since. And the whole Rush, my first band that I made, not the school band, but the first band that I set up was a Rush covers band, the first band. Every Sunday, yeah. So every Sunday I would drag my double bass drum kit down the stairs of my house in England and put it into the car and go and rehearse with my band from 10 o'clock until 6 o'clock at night. And that wasn't long enough. Every Sunday, to my parents' despair, dragging holding the bass drum, one bass drum, two bass drums, all the toms, setting it up over there and playing Rush covers, which is, I think, why today things like all the odd time signature stuff and all these really weird things are no problem to me. That's kind of a lot of what I do. And because my first group was a Rush covers band, and we played everything to the letter, the whole thing, all the albums, the whole A-sides, B-sides, everything.
Was there a name of the band? Did you have a name of that band at that time?
I can't remember. We went through a few different names when we played at our high school. So, I mean, get this. If you imagine that long ago, what most kids of, let's say, 15, 16 and so on were listening to, it would be, pop music, Wham, over in England, Wham, Duran Duran, which at the time, those bands, Duran Duran, for example, at the time, I thought it was terrible rubbish. And now I listen to that music again. It's like, wow, great stuff, really great stuff. But at that time, they were listening to all this stuff in the top 40. And we played a gig. We played a gig in our local, in our school to these guys. And of course, you can imagine a Rush covers band playing, Xanadu and A-side of Hemispheres and stuff like that to these kids who had absolutely no idea what we were talking about. But they liked it anyway, So.
So Neil has influenced generations and will continue to influence generations. I was honored to be a part of the recent Modern Drummer Festival that is still able to be aired on moderndrummer.com. And this festival was a tribute to Neil Peart. And all the drummers that came out to that performed, the influence that Neil had to everyone was just so amazing. His depth of not only his performance, artistic performance ability, the lyrics that he wrote, being a part of, composing the tunes, just his energy of being able to have the drum kits that he developed to play. I mean, out of the Neil Peart's mind was magic at so many levels. So how did the school enjoy the band? What was it like playing with the band and playing in front of your friends?
It was great. As I said, I think they kind of liked it anyway, just for what we were doing. So I don't think they really understood a lot of it. They came anyway, which is what it's all about. They came and supported us like the parents had come. Sometimes they might not like the kids' music, but they come anyway, because it's all about supporting each other. But I think what was quite strange, quite weird, is the teachers. The music teachers. They came down and had listeners like, "What's this guy doing? Playing this stuff in 7/8 and bar of 7/8, bar of 4/4, bar of 5/4 and stuff like this, strung together." And I think they were quite impressed. And the thing is, as Rush did as well, what we were doing, we were really into the whole sequence of things, and we had sequences underneath. When they were sequences at that time, it wasn't a computer. It was like an actual sequencer with
Yeah,
a
yeah.
keyboard part on it. And we were playing these things. I was triggering them off, and I was playing with the headphones, and it was really technical stuff. I mean, really, really, really technical stuff. And how we got away with starting a song and actually finishing it was astonishing. And I think I'm proud of what we did. And just like Rush, in the 3-member group, we all had our responsibilities. And when I was finishing one thing, the guy would, I remember this, I actually made, because I couldn't find, some Taurus pedals, which are pedals shaped like a keyboard. And you can find these like on an organ, and they're actually called Taurus pedals, and you can play bass and keyboard lines on them. And I couldn't find any, so I made some out of metal. And kind of had to put these little bits of metal on an actual small keyboard. And we didn't have telephones that could take photos at that time, but it was a stunning piece of engineering, I'm telling you. So, yeah,
it's amazing, Rob, how years ago we didn't have any of the tools we have today. I mean, even this concept that I'm in my studio on the North Shore of Long Island, which you have been at, and here you are in the south of France in Marseille, and we have this clarity of a communication. We didn't have this when we were younger. So the tools that this young generation has are absolutely amazing. But it's interesting how creative we had to be at that time, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, as I said, that kind of keyboard thing that I made, the thing really was, and we've talked about this, myself and you, in clinics, to clinic audiences and just together. The thing is, when you have no choice, then nothing. I remember at that age, nothing would stop me. And so the very fact for these pedals, for example, you couldn't even go on the net and find where there might be some for sale. I just needed the pedals, so I made it and I cut it out of metal and stuff like that. You do what you have to do at that particular time. Yeah. However ridiculous it may sound now, because now, we can speak. I'm speaking to you in New York and so on, and it just wasn't like that at the time. So we had to do what we had to do to make it work, and I would have done anything.
Well, again, that level of perseverance and passion and desire, that's something which is really something important for this next generation to understand. Listen, if you're into it and this is what you want to do, you'll will it to happen. You'll make it happen in any way.
Yeah, totally. And I thank that period of time, because I grew up in that time when things weren't available like what we're doing now. Yeah. And I grew up in that time, and I think that was that was really that was what makes me the person I am today. That what makes me so determined, the person that I am today, and it really has given me that drive, is that kind of way of thinking back in that time. So I think the challenge that maybe some of the younger guys have today is that a lot of things are given to them on a plate, so to speak. They don't have to work as hard as they did to do this sort of thing. Look at YouTube and all the information that's available there and so on. We didn't have that, so it doesn't matter. We can still do it, but I thank the time that I had in that particular generation. It was really my it was my apprenticeship, let's say.
Yeah, well, absolutely, totally. But listen, you succeeded. You're an excellent player. You're an excellent educator and an author. So you really put the time in of what it takes to make all this happen in the process. Were there any other drummers that you were being influenced by that you were listening to around that age?
Yeah, totally. Well, Neil Peart was one, as I mentioned. That was the main one, and I just listened to Rush. I think my brother bought home a Rush album, and I was like listening to it from my bedroom, and it's like, but it was like a little bit, in our house, it was a little bit, rock music. Oh, I shouldn't really listen to that. My parents were very happy for me listening to Mike Oldfield and so on, but, drums and singing, I mean, but so I was very much into Rush, at that point. And then you mentioned Simon Phillips, Billy Cobham at that particular point. Although I was fascinated by these drummers, but I didn't necessarily listen to the music that they were playing. Maybe Simon Phillips a little bit, but Billy Cobham, I was fascinated by him and his playing, his set, but I didn't really listen to like Mahavishnu or anything like that. I wasn't really into the jazz stuff at that particular time. So it was really that, and then some of the rock stuff. Mostly rock at that particular time, basically. Yeah.
So now, you were starting to play with other musicians now? You had this Rush cover band. Was there anything more happening as far as other types of musicians you were meeting?
Well, to be honest with you, I spent years in that band, really, and then we kind of had a few lineup changes eventually, and realized that maybe we couldn't go through life playing the whole Rush, discography, basically. And we tried some of the bands. We went to some more harder music, some more metal stuff. I was quite interested in a lot of metal stuff that I still am. At that particular point, yeah, it was mainly still kids' bands. And then, life comes in and you have to go and work and stuff like that, and I went to music college in Leeds. I got my degree, strangely enough, in jazz studies at that particular point. So what actually happened for that was when I left school, I left school with not very much in the way of qualifications or anything like that, because I was so into drumming, which is, I'm not promoting that idea. Okay. And I spent a lot of time working in different jobs. And then one day I decided that I would do two things. I would start being a professional drummer. So I went to a music shop and asked to actually give lessons in that music shop. I was accepted. I hooked up with a blues player in Harrogate called Rob Donnelly, and we never had any rehearsals, never, ever, ever. We sat down and played, and I've never had any rehearsals with him before or since or whatever. So I became a professional, let's say, musician, live gigging musician, a teacher, and at the same time, because I wanted to honor what my parents would have liked, I went back in parallel to learn music, and I got my degree in jazz studies. So I actually studied music as well and got qualified with it.
How great is that? So in a jazz studies program, what did you work on? Did they analyze all the great jazz players? Were you playing in bands at that time? How was that working?
Yeah, well, very good question, because it's quite weird that I've never really been a jazz player. I get by much better now playing jazz, having listened to it, than I did at that time. So I think everybody has a background, and I have a rock background, and you can hear that quite often. You do have people who, move from one genre to another, but I'm definitely a rock drummer. Okay. And I went into this jazz studies course, BA Honours degree in jazz studies, Bachelor of Arts. And there were loads of classes, and we had obviously lessons, ensemble lessons. We played in groups. We had lessons on the theory of jazz, music construction, harmony, analysis, history of jazz, great plays, the whole lot. I mean, it's not just drums, it was the whole lot. And I learned a lot about music, and I really, really believe that it's very, very important to know music. I know music inside out, harmony-wise, melodic-wise. And now here in the school, I actually teach every Saturday a music theory course. So I'm quite up on that. Well, I mainly play drums.
But you also play bass guitar too, right?
I do. That's quite new, actually. Yeah. I mean, I know my way around instruments, generally speaking. I know my way around the piano. I'm not a piano player. I know my way around guitar. I think when you came over here once, you saw me actually singing and playing the guitar in a group. We swapped around a bit. We had a group at that time. I don't play with them anymore, but we had a group where I was the drummer, and we would all swap around on instruments. And I actually got up and sang and played the guitar, which maybe you should wipe that from your memory. But
it was good, man. It was very, very good.
And you played as well. You got up and played. It was great. Great evening. Yeah, it was a great, fantastic group. And I now play quite a lot of bass. And again, to honor the bassists who may be listening, I am not a bass player, but I love. I can't pretend to be a bass player, but I love the bass, and I get by on it quite nicely. And I actually play in a few groups over here, bass, and a little bit of singing, and it's a great instrument. I actually played bass. I don't do it anymore, but I played bass in an Iron Maiden covers band.
Oh, wow.
And that is bass. I mean, I'm not saying I played it, I'm not a bass player, but I got by, and it's a great instrument to play.
And who was the drummer on that gig? Because they got to fill Nico McBrain's shoes.
Yeah, well, that was Fanny, who you know. So
Fanny's a wonderful female player that's in France that I've met several times. She's a phenomenal musician. She's a great. Her mom's also a singer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I play with her mother as well. She's a singer, and I play in that group as well. Yeah. The group that played Iron Maiden covers, that was fantastic, and we had two great guitarists and a fantastic singer, because the singer's shoes is probably one of the hardest parts to fill. And Fanny played the drums on that. Obviously, you know how great she plays, with fantastic filling Nico's shoes. And I had the bass part, and I loved that, because what I love about those bassists is that they're really playing the bass.
Yeah,
it really, and the harmony that I've learned in music college helped me. I just know my way around it so easily. I've got a very good ear for that, so I help out with all these groups a lot in the harmony thing, and of course the drum part as well.
Well, Rob, that's so great. We've got several people that have joined us here. I want to mention a couple of names here. We've got Simon Bijari, who has joined us here. Simon is a student of mine that's moved down from Denmark to upstate New York, a phenomenal teacher and player. John Owens, another phenomenal player and educator in North Carolina here in the States. Stephen Chamberlain, who's here, who you know from Quebec City, Canada. Stephen's a phenomenal young player. Artem Akor, who's from Moscow. He and his wife are phenomenal drummers. They are part of a series of lessons that I do with Maxim Diomin, and Maxim has joined us here from Russia. Artem Akor is from Moscow. James Calhoun is here. Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. James, great to see you. Catherine Wall has joined us. Catherine Wall, who's here now, is from Christchurch, New Zealand.
Wow.
So that's like, 15 hours ahead of us from New York time for sure. Thor Zinn is here. Marcus is here. We've got George Breitner, who's a wonderful player in the Connecticut area, who's currently working with some students. Sabian's joined on. You've got the heads of Sabian that are a part of this here. Joe Bergamini came on, and Joe has actually showed, which we'll talk about in a second, check out your book, Rob, which we're going to talk about here. Yeah. Facility. We're going to get to that in a moment in more than what you've done. Maxim Diomin, as you know, hello, Rob, he's here. Jorge Sanchez from Spain is here. My gosh, look at this. Eugene Zlobin, Odessa, Ukraine has joined us here.
Wow.
Tony McNally, who's got my gosh, Tony is so phenomenal with the tonality that he's created, the sticks that show he's joined us here from Jarrow, UK. That's fantastic. Yeah. We've got all these different players here. We've got one question here by Eugene. I'm going to go back to Eugene here. Do you use knowledge about drums to develop other instruments? So how has your drumming knowledge and you playing theory on piano and bass, how has that all helped all the instruments?
Well, I would say, do you use knowledge about drums to develop another instrument? Yes, I do. They're all linked. They're all linked, definitely. And one of the things we do over here in the school is we have every holiday we have a kind of music camp, and we invite a student drummer and a student bassist, student guitarist, singers, keyboard players, and they get together and they form a group, and it's a 4-day event. Wow. And it's really every holiday, and they're usually beginners, kind of beginners. And one of the main reasons we do that is to conquer their stage fright, if you will. And they're quite often quite timid. I don't think I can do this and all this sort of thing. And we teach them that by the end of it, we teach them that they can. And I use a lot of that in the context of arrangement. Arrangement is working out how the bass fits in with the drums, how the drums can punctuate certain parts of the guitar part and so on. And that's really it's really important to have a knowledge of all the instruments. And I am the general coach in that music camp, and we have it every holiday. And my job is to arrange the music and say, you do that and you do that and you do that, making sure that they're involved, of course, but making them understand how this fits in with that. It's a puzzle, really. You have the guitar part just by itself maybe sounds a little strange. But then you have a bass part that might change underneath it, harmony-wise, and that creates something different. And of course, the drums underneath that are they're gonna help. They're going to assist with all the other instruments. So it really is, the whole thing is a harmony situation. Every instrument helps every other one. And of course, my knowledge about drums definitely helps to develop other instruments. Definitely, yes.
So when you're playing bass and you work with another drummer, that must be such a cool feeling to be able to do that, to lock in, because you know the drums so well, and now you're locking in with them. You could probably lay time better. You can lock into their groove better. There's probably so many great advantages.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. You know, there's this thing about the drums and the bass, they're obviously very close. It's a rhythm section, obviously. Right. And there's this whole thing about, the bass drum has to come down on the bass line. But it's not always like that. I can't remember where I read it, but I remember how Chad Smith and Flea were just like so amazingly not together. Now, I can't remember the exact phrase, but amazingly not together. What that means is they weren't playing together, but they weren't playing together like that. Every note that came on the bass drum and every note that came on the bass, but they were playing unbelievably not together, but in perfect synchronization. So one was complementing the other. So sometimes the bass drum part doesn't actually sit on the bass part, but it complements it perfectly. So that's really a balance that you have to really work on and make sure that both of you are doing one rhythmic task, and that you're really forming an excellent rhythm section by being one instrument, basically.
So it's more about kind of intertwining with the musician as it is a matter of always playing what they're playing.
Exactly, which is where that phrase comes. I can't remember the exact phrase, but it was very well said, playing so perfectly not together. It wasn't not together, but it was something like that. But it really was that they were playing, Flea and Chad Smith playing perfectly together, but not necessarily the notes together, but intertwining, as you say.
Interesting. Boy, Eugene, great question. Thanks, man. This is so great to have this level of information that's shared worldwide now, Rob, which is what we're doing right now. This is incredible. Let's talk about education for a second. And you wrote the book. You put this book together. We kind of worked on it together, Groove Facility. And this was a kind of an idea out of my book, It's Your Move. And you expanded on the idea. Just talk about the book, about how we've talked about you understood Moeller so well and you started putting that inside the grooves. Talk about how this all came about.
Well, as you say, you have in your book, there is a chapter, and I believe it's the last chapter, called Groove Facility. And I kind of quite liked how we worked on that movement, the Moeller movement, and it was actually put on the kit, which is really nice. And the thing is, this really stems from, like everything that we do, like my YouTube videos that I put out and this book and things like that, they all come from a query or a situation that might happen in a lesson. And I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, oh, look, I play good, I play great, I'm an accomplished drummer, but I want to get more sound out of the kit, or I'm stuck, I don't know how to get through to the next level.
Right.
Yeah, I think what's been missing, in my opinion, is how to actually, we all learn Moeller on the pad and so on, but was there a book at that particular time that actually showed you how to, as I do in my lessons, how to actually get that sound and that movement out of the drum kit? Because it's a strange thing to say, but all drumming happens in the air. It's all what we do. It all happens above the set, and the impact of the stick hitting the head is only the end product. What happens above the kit in the air is really where we get that sound, where we get that solid sound of. And it's in the book. It's all about preparing strokes. It's not just about playing them. It's about having the stick be where it should be to do the task, in question.
Boy, absolutely. It's kind of interesting because when we talked about this idea and when you had come by and had studied with me, I could see that you had a real good, understanding, a comprehension of how this movement worked. And what you have in the book, which I like, is we came up with components. Yeah. These are components. These are components of movement. And with those components of movement, as we take each one down and separate it, we then begin to understand the moment of each of those rhythms and that movement, and then those components put together comes out to the groove.
Yeah.
And because of learning those components, the groove can be in 4/4, the groove can be in 7/8. How you put the components together is completely, this is kind of like the letters of the alphabet. Understanding each letter of the alphabet is one thing. When you start putting it together with different words, it changes and grows. So what you did, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, was the fact that you had these components laid out for them to learn the movement individually.
Totally, yeah. And the thing is, as well, not only can we move them around, but of course we can. But sometimes it's like, I think it says in the beginning of the book here, it's like a factory, if a factory or a business there's something that's not working quite right, maybe a little percentage of the business, then you have to get a microscope out and work out what's not happening in that part, because it's only as strong as the weakest link. And, I find that a lot of what happens with students who are learning a particular groove, let's say just a 4-beat groove, 4/4. And the problem is in the 3rd beat. There may be some syncopation in there and stuff like that, or a movement. And then I'll say to them, okay, let's play the groove, and they'll go up to that 3rd beat where it all goes pear-shaped, and then stop. And they'll go back to the beginning and they'll say, okay, I'll do it again, and they'll go up to the 3rd beat and then they'll go back to the beginning, and all they do is reinforce what they already know, because when the going gets tough on the 3rd beat, they stop because it's not quite right. So the first thing I say to them is, guys, stop. You're just rehearsing the 1st and the 2nd beat. Stop. What's the problem? The problem is the 3rd beat. Stop. Look at the 3rd beat, that component, as it's called in group facility. Look at that, because that's your problem, not before. So they look at that, work on it, work on that movement, because it all is a question of movement. As you know, fluid movement creates fluid sound. And it's actually, it really is. When you see a drummer playing with fluid movement, they're going to sound great. Yeah. Okay, so it really is very, very important. And they work on that 3rd beat, and then they go back to the beginning, and, lo and behold, it comes out right. But if I'd have left them doing nothing, they'd have been repeating again and again the 1st and the 2nd beat and stopping on the 3rd, hoping it would be getting better. And they can hope it will get better until the following day, but they really have to look at what's not working.
Well, that analyzing of that individual component is going to allow them to feel that now they can get through the beat a little easier, because they isolated that one challenge.
Yeah, it's very, very logical way of looking at it, and then of course that breeds confidence.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. They know that they're going to get to that 3rd beat. It's going to work, and then they go through it, and it's fine. And that's what every business does. It looks at what's not, if something's not working, it looks at that particular thing, not other parts. We home in what's not working. If we have a piece that's broken on the kid, we look at that particular piece, on a stand or something. We don't look at the bottom, we look at that piece, and we replace that particular piece of the stand. So the same with one bar. If the 3rd beat's not working, we need to have a look at the 3rd beat, work that out, and then put it all back together. And of course, you then have a second layer, which is actually stringing it together, because that has to be taken into account as well.
Boy, that really is great. Listen, the book works. I take my students through it all the time, because it allows them to kind of break open some of the challenges they have, some of these hiccups or some of these glitches that happen in their playing, and it totally smooths it out. And the book is also available. This is the link that Joe Bergamini has here. The book's also available on hudsonmusic.com in digital form. So maybe Joe Bergamini can pull up that link and send that link to me here. So I'll bring that up at some point too. This is fantastic to have the book available. So I say to everybody, Groove Facility, go out, check it out. It's in paper book on Alfred, hudsonmusic.com on digital, and check out the book. I think it'll open you up to a whole new way. It'll probably help you with many of the students that you have that kind of hit that point where they hit that roadblock, and we got to kind of get them over that roadblock on certain partials of a groove.
Yeah, and a lot of my students that go through it, they actually get fired from their group for playing too loud. That's great. That's yeah. But I'm joking. But they really have a really, really strong backbeat. It really brings out this. And then I've seen it so many times, and I've been very happy with it. Thank you, Felipe. That's great.
Yeah, and Felipe, again, is a Brazilian drummer living in the UK and a phenomenal player. He's got his own book out, Play Drums. which is fantastic. And here he is again using your book by putting molar motion into the right beats. And it's really kind of great to see how many of these teachers support the book and what they're doing, which is fantastic, Rob.
Yeah, it's great. I've seen it happen many times, and I'm very happy when I can take somebody through the book and when I can show them these techniques, and they always acknowledge it. Yeah, okay, they always feel it sounds. Their playing opens up.
Yeah. So I say, and here's the link that we have on Hudson Music. Hudson Music, which is out of the brilliant mind of Rob Wallace, who is just a fantastic drummer himself, who's got the concept of putting together hudsonmusic.com, which has all these digital books. He's got almost every single book around digitized. So it's so much easier to purchase the book. You download it to your tablet, to your phone, to your laptop. You've got the book right there. You can carry it with you on your phone. So I would say, check out all these different books and in a format that would work out for you in the process. Let's talk, Rob, about your students now. So you got your different students. You teach at a school, the MLC Academy that you have in Marseille, and you've got them in. But you've also put together a camp that I was also a part of several times. That you put a camp together. You went and got a facility, outside of Marseille. You got students involved to be able to house us all, and you made this happen. It was a fantastic adventure. Every time I've been there, just talk about the camp idea that you put together.
Yeah, I'm losing a little bit there on the connection, but I think that we didn't do it this year or the last year, unfortunately. But the camp was fantastic. It was called Provence Drum Camp, and I was working with the lady who called Chantal, and she was a very passionate drummer and a big fan of the instrument. And the idea was to have a drum camp that was a bit out in the sticks. You've been to Puy-Loubier, which is where it was, a beautiful little village here. And the idea was to have people coming down there, which is a little bit more difficult. If we had the drum camp in the town, then a lot more people maybe would come to it. And it's easy to get to, and there's public transport. And Puy-Loubier, as you know, is a lovely little Provençal village. It's difficult to get to, but it's worth it when you get there. And that was the whole idea, was to have this drum camp in that setting, that nice little village setting. And it was fantastic. We didn't do it last time. It is a challenge, like any of these camps at the moment. So will it come back? I hope so. But this particular year, we didn't do it. And you've been twice, and didn't we have a great time? It's fantastic.
But it was so great to be able to be there and do that. Let me just show this link to you that check out the digital bookstore and now the Play Along track store.
Yeah.
In the music, you have some music that comes along with the book.
Yes.
That Play Along music. Just talk about that as far as the Play Along music.
The Play Along music, yeah. So there's 3 Play Along tracks. And there are 3 different tempos. Is that tempi or tempos? I never know which one it should be. But I took the degree in music, right? Let's just say tempos, right? Okay, for now. So the first tempo is, and I can't remember the exact tempo of it, but it's a classic walking pace. So that's the first one that you need to attack. It's just a classic, this kind of pace rock groove, and it really does work on a classic 2 and 4 backbeat. And then the second one, it actually slows the tempo down a lot. I believe it's like 80 BPM or something like that. So you really have to work very, very carefully on getting all of those ghost notes in the right place. So it really homes in. Because it's slower, you have to be very, very precise. So that's the second one. It's a bit more of a challenge, whereas the first one is kind of just laid back. And then the third one, the challenge is it's a lot faster, and it's a 2-bar phrase with a lot of ghost notes in there. And the tempo is it's quite a lot higher, and there's a little bit of a solo in there. And the thing was that what I tried to do in the book was to give the student the choice of how many ghost notes they can put in there or not, because we don't have to fill up every single space with the ghost notes. It's all about choice as well, and good taste. So in the book, there's 3 different layers of the amount of ghost notes we can put in or not. So that's the idea of those playbacks. And just before those playbacks, there's the idea of playing along with a bass line. There's a bass line in there, and then we show those 3 layers we can just play a straight groove, maybe put a little bit of ghost in there, or maybe fill it up with ghost notes, and it's a choice. And that kind of comes back to what we were saying about the whole bass drum relationship there.
Yeah. Boy, it's kind of interesting to see. I mean, you really have put an amazing amount of time into this effort and what you're doing, especially with teaching. So now with the COVID challenges that have gone down, as it's affected many musicians, you're not really out there working. You're not really, it's a whole different world of how it is. Actually, Joe Bergamini just put up here's one of Rob's tracks from Group Facility. Hudson has dozens of tracks in all styles available now. The store is in beta, so we're improving as we're going. But it's hudsonmusic.com.
Right.
Product, Group Facility, play along song number 1. So I want people to kind of search to find the material that you have that may be available. Thanks, Joe, so much. Yeah. So going back to COVID now. So things changed. It shut things down. Nobody was out playing. You did some lessons online, but now you're back to teaching, one-on-one?
Well, yes. When the lockdown, I don't think I'm the only one that thinks this, but it was quite a shock for everybody, right? So, suddenly, very, very quickly, we're all locked down, couldn't go out. I would use the word frightening. Having that level of, it's not the actual event that's frightening, but the idea that we could actually suddenly have the government saying to us, you've got to stay indoors. It's like, it's quite concerning at that particular time. And we stopped the lessons for a little while, worked out how to do that very, very quickly, like anybody fighting to survive. It's like, what are we going to do? Yeah. And we developed this online system. Of course, the first thing that everybody's going to go to is the thing that we've been doing for many years already, which is online stuff. And this started years and years ago with people sending VHS cassettes to each other, video cassettes. Remember that when people were doing distance lessons and they were sending actual video, and you send me your video, I'll analyze it and send it back. And then we got the online thing, and now we're so used to doing that of course it was the obvious choice when the lockdown came in, and we were doing that, and it actually worked very well. I was very impressed by how much, I think because the COVID thing and the lockdown was quite shocking to everybody, they warmed up to it and said, yeah, I want to continue playing. I want to do that. And we did some filming and we did stuff on WhatsApp and all sorts of things like that. And I was very impressed by the dedication that students have. And strangely enough, I noticed that I got more dedication from the guys that I wouldn't have expected to be involved in the technology stuff, and a little bit less from all the kids, always on their phones and stuff like that. Yeah. They had a little bit more trouble actually getting into that online system, which is quite not the way I would have imagined it. But it worked really, really well. But then when the lockdown was finished, I think we kept another 2 weeks in the distance learning thing, and then we got back into actual real lessons, and we finished the end of year with an end of year kind of concert thing, and we just got back to normal. And of course we have the masks and the social distancing. We're careful, obviously, as I mentioned before the video started here. We in Marseille, where I am, in the whole of France, it was the kind of like the red zone, the worst zone here in Marseille. Everything shut down for this second wave that we're kind of feeling right now. It's the worst. And I have a succession of gigs that seem to appear in my diary, in my agenda, and then the closer we get to them, they get knocked off the list. They disappear, and then there's another one. They get close to this one, that disappears. But I actually did 2 gigs. About a week or so ago. Actually, a drummer actually playing in front of a live audience. Can you believe that? A drummer playing in front of a live audience? I thought that was gone. I thought it was finished. But he actually got there and sat on the seat of a drum set and played to a live audience. And was I happy to do that? Wow, amazing. Wow.
It's amazing what we can miss and what we have. We've had such these wonderful advantages through the course of our lives. And when they're taken away, you really start to understand how lucky we were, how lucky we will be when it gets back into action. So here you are now in Marseille, and people are coming in with their masks and your social distancing. So you're starting to get back into the old way of doing things. Yeah. And eventually, in time, there'll be bands that'll be performing, and we'll be back in action pretty soon before we can realize it.
Yeah, I totally believe that. There's so many. We hear so many things. It'll never be the same. The virus is here to stay forever. It may be the case in some form, but I truly believe. I mean, I've heard everything. I'm sure that everybody's heard everything. You know, all sorts of theories and everything. But I truly believe. I believe in this time that we will get back to doing things as we were before. Obviously, life happens, things change. We have to make the adjustments, but I truly believe that live music will come back and we'll be playing again. You know, the world has got over this kind of epidemic before. It's happened, and it will happen again.
Yeah. I mean, listen, these are challenges that are thrown at us, and we have to start being creative in what we do. I mean, I've always been teaching online, so the students that came to my studios, we just moved to online. So now I'm doing all of my students online. And my setup in here was designed many years ago by Jim Toscano, who is a brilliant teacher and player. His book, Filling in the Grooves, is a phenomenal seller. And Jim, kind of helped me redesign and upgrade my equipment that I had here. For a time there, my switcher that I use for my cameras was the size of my freaking mailbox. Now, it's the size of my cell phone. So, I mean, it's just amazing to see how the equipment's changed. So we upgraded everything. I teach this way, and it works. It's fantastic. And a lot of my students that normally would have to drive an hour to an hour and a half to get to me, now when we do the lessons online, I see them on their drum set. So that's an advantage right there. I get to see them on their kit the way it is. And they see me on my kit the way it is. And they're saving the 3 hours of driving time to get to the lesson. So there are some advantages that we have now where I tell my students now that 3 hour of driving time, I want you to put that into practicing. Yeah. You found the time before to drive, now find that time to practice. And improving is happening even more with what they're playing. So there are certain advantages that we have in the challenges of what we're doing now. But I mean, it's really kind of crazy to see the workings of how the world has changed.
Yeah. And will continue to change. We continue, and I really believe. I was talking to my friend that we both know, Paul Hose, recently, and we were talking about the same kind of subject. And I really believe that they're both important. This online thing. I mean, look how clear this picture is. It's amazing. It's getting better, and I really believe that this technology is here to stay, and it will improve. So I believe that's very, very important to embrace that and to use it for this kind of thing that we're doing now. And also, I believe that people actually want that contact. Musicians are social animals anyway, obviously. So, we can't, I'm very, very careful about being just virtual as well. We really have to work on how we get that balance between the two. Using this technology, we don't want to say, oh, no, I don't. Old hat, and we don't want to do that. We can use it, but we also need to know, where real life is. And I think you get this right, Dom. I think you're somebody who has grown up, in this time when all this stuff wasn't available. So you could easily be on that side of saying, that's not for me. No, I do the old way, old school stuff. But no, you're embracing that technology, and that's what's really great. So you're getting that mixture going. That really have to get that balance going. It's very, very important because we're still humans, and we still are social creatures.
Well said, Rob. It's kind of interesting. And what I've done, listen, I'm 67, so I came from an older school back I was born in 1953. So when you think about what I came through and what we had none of this. We had little, I go back when we listened to 78 records. 78s were kind of this big. Then it went to LP, the record got bigger. Then it went to 45s. Then it went down to cassettes. So, and then we went into digital format, and then we got into CDs, and now we're into downloading. So, I mean, I've seen this incredible change in my lifetime. And if we embrace the change and begin to adapt to it, I mean, even with using Zoom now, Zoom has had, using Zoom, I've been using Zoom for several years now, and now they came out with a whole new, upgrade, and the upgrade now changes the way Zoom looks. So even though I've been using Zoom, as they upgrade and that changes, I have to adapt to the new change. Either I learn it or I fail at it. Yeah. So it's welcoming the change of what it is, which you have done so well with the school and where you are, and continuing education in the area of where you are in Marseille, which is so exciting.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what I feel. You know, as I go, as I go through the years pass by. I don't want to get into too much of that kind of talk, but as the years go by, we discover a little bit more of who we are. And maybe years back, I was thinking, well, am I a live player, or am I an educator, or so on? You know, we've got to be all these things, of course. But little by little, I'm finding my personal role in life that is my main thing. And my main thing right now that I'm feeling is to actually be a coach and help other players. That's really my calling in life. That's what I find. It doesn't mean I'm not going to play. I love playing, but playing is the same thing. You're still transmitting the passion. Whether you play or whether you teach, they're both transmissions of this passion. One is explaining how we do it. The other one is actually showing people how we do it. We're still transmitting that energy. And that's really what I love, that my whole calling in life is to really coach other players. And, you know, when they come to the school, my first way of thinking is I've got to help this guy and then send him on his way. Simple as that.
Well said, Rob. You know, and you're doing it, and you're still doing it. For the many years that I've known you, from when you first came down to study with me at the shed here, and we're a part of this. You were here before the shed was built.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Remember those days, right? And then I built my studio 16 years ago. So it's amazing to see when I see players like yourself come to me and grow and develop into this incredible artist that you are, this incredible educator that you are, producing products, continuing the energy of teaching and playing. Listen, that's why I say with the Sabian Education Network, this is the backbone. This is the backbone of what we do in our industry. These educators. Just if you can, for a few minutes, just talk about your cymbal setup, your Sabian cymbal setup. What cymbals do you have there that you use?
Right now, it's quite a basic setup. I've got a hi-hat, ride, 2 crashes. I'm a really big fan of HHXs. Okay. The symbol I've got here, can you see? I've got this one. There we go, HHX. Yeah. It's a 19 explosion crash. 19 or 48 centimeters. This Volt Fierce ride that I just love. It's like 21 inch, I believe. Over here, the Evolution, 18-inch Evolution HHX crash. They forgot to fill in these holes. I don't know what that's all about.
Is that the ozone? That's the ozone, right?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean that's what it's delivered as. So I hope that's not a mistake in the fabrication process. And this hi-hat really is just great. HHX Evolution 13-inch, and you know, for this hi-hat here, I was speaking to Christian at Sabian. That particular point, and I needed another pair of hi-hats, and I love the 13 inches. And he said, "Well, what kind of sound you want?" You know, instead of saying, "Well, what you're looking for," he said, "What kind of sound you want?" And I told him what sound I wanted, and I got this sent. And it's just really a testimony to how, you know, these people know their stuff, because the sound that these hi-hats make is exactly what I described to him. It's absolutely stunning. I played them, you know, amazing. And these people, you really understand at that particular moment that, you know, they're not just pretty faces. They really do know what they're talking about. So I was amazed.
That is Christian Koch, who lives in Germany and works as a Sabian Artist Relations in Europe. And he's a brilliant drummer himself and a brilliant mind. And like I said, these guys, you know, Christian, he knows the cymbals, he knows the lines, and everybody at Sabian, they have this incredible knowledge of sounds. And even like that ozone, when Sabian was the first company to come in, and by popping out those holes, it changed the sound of the cymbal and kept the strength of the cymbal, so the cymbal doesn't crack. So I thought it was kind of interesting that how innovative that Sabian is to do what they do. And here you are, you know, in the south of France, playing gigs, and you've got your Sabians there, and they produce the sounds that you need. That really is very exciting.
Oh yeah. Very, 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 obviously very happy for that. The great cymbals. You're right about the ozone. I mean, it's that really weird crush, but a little bit trashy sounds. And it's stunning. I love it. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, Rob, it's great to have this kind of time with you. You know, it really is. I always say to have this feature time where we can talk about these ideas and share these ideas. And you've got people all around the world, some friends of yours and people that didn't know who you were that joined on from all around in Russia and the Ukraine and what they have. It's just so great to have everybody join in and touch base. You mentioned Paul Hose. I had Paul Hose on this particular interview several months ago. Paul is a phenomenal drummer, also in England, that is associated with you and what you're doing. And Massimo Russo I had on the side, who also knows you well too. And we've done all these camps together. It's been so exciting to do it. When time is right and we can have the camps together and do this again, it'll be absolutely fantastic. And we'll get to that sooner than later for sure.
It will happen, Dom. It will happen, that's for sure. And I just want to thank you again for this opportunity. And it's really great to see all these people signing up, signing in here, and people you talked about. I hope I've been able to answer a few of those questions and, put some, try and show a bit of what I've been doing, basically.
Rob, you've done fantastic. And I say again, with the book Guru Facility, guys, go out there and pick up the book. Check out the book the way it is. It's fantastic and helpful for many educators in what we're doing. So, Rob, thank you so much on behalf of the Sabian Education Network and Joe Bergamini, who manages this site, and everybody over at Sabian, Andy and Stacy, and all the people that help put it together, Christian Stanky, another great person on U.S. Artist Relations. All these people are the energy behind the company that put this together. They give us this vehicle to allow what you're doing. Spread this around the world. Bring it on. Sabian Education Network. Rob, I thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we'll touch base, and I'll see you soon for sure.
Great. Thank you very much, Ulrich. Thank you so much. That's great.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye. Bye.